This is Katie Youngblood, and I am going to be presenting on Chapter 6, and this has to do with moral rights within the workplace. I'm sorry if this little window bothers you. It's just going to live there for now. But let's jump right into it. Legal rights are the first thing that we kind of think of when we think of rights within the workplace, something that is written and in legislation, which is all fun and dandy. It's super relevant, but the chapter is going to gear more towards of the moral entitlement and the moral rights within the workplace rather than a legality sense. But the legal rights that are granted to employees are of course have to do with the moral rights. It has to do with minimum wage, equal opportunities, things that are written in law, like the federal minimum wage at $7.25, civil rights that are in place that prevent employers from discriminating based on sex, religion, or race. The goods employees are entitled to, which would be the second one, like healthcare packages, paid holidays, paid vacations, pension funds, things along the lines of that, almost like an incentive for employers to give employees to come and work for them, to get more skilled workers, to get more, dedicated workers. The third would be, like I said, the moral entitlement. This is based on employees that are expected to be respected as a human being, not just as a number, not just as an employee, as somebody that is actually wanting to be there, is actually enjoying their time at work, per se. Now, the employment agreement, the textbook touches very briefly on this, but this essentially is a bargaining over terms, conditions of work, like certain wages, benefits, working conditions. And this is something that an employer proposes to an employee. And in return, they expect more efficient productivity from that worker. And you can kind of see in like a professional setting, these two guys, yeah, I'll come and work for you. You give me $21 an hour. Now, like I said earlier, the legalities of things are super relevant, but there are different from the moral rights. Minimum wage, like at $7.25, equal opportunities, like I've mentioned before, protections from certain harm. Take, for example, like sexual harassment within the workplace. That, legality wise would protect you from, sexual harassment, because you shouldn't be proposed with the ultimatum of choosing to be sexually harassed, but you're still making a lot of money at this job. You shouldn't be proposed with either quitting your job and not having to deal with that, or staying at the job and, putting up with the sexual harassment. And that's just one example of certain harms that you are protected from within the workplace. Moral rights, you have freedom, like if something seems unjust to you, you can speak up to that employer. You don't feel as vulnerable. The second would be prevention of coercion, which is super important for employees. It puts employees at an advantage, because if this wasn't in place, this would oftentimes leave employees at a disadvantage, because employers like to, money is a very driven thing that we like to make a priority. So a lot of the times employers can get away with coercing certain employees to do things and to work long hours, and the list goes on and on and on. Meaningful work fulfillment, that has to do a lot with the human fulfillment model that the textbook mentions in chapter 5, the previous chapter, because if you didn't feel good about your work, it doesn't teach you discipline and focus and, a good work ethic, it's kind of meaningless. So that also has to do with the more rights